got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining the Cryptid Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dan Hamilton. You guys, tonight I've got a pretty great guest on. I've got Curtis coming on the show. He's from California. And back in 1983, when he was about 15 years old, he witnessed something. And I have to say, it's pretty incredible. Now, Curtis is an avid outdoorsman. You name it. Fishing, hiking, motorcycle camping. He does it all. He also is a knower, but also he's an author. He wrote a book about his encounter. But before we bring Curtis on, I just want to say, you guys, thank you so much for showing up and watching the content that I produce and listening to these incredible encounters and stories from our guests. Now, understand that this is a very safe space for anybody who wants to share their encounter, share their stories. So if you've had an encounter or story and you'd like to come on the show, please email me at thecryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. thecryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. And just so that you guys know, the Cryptid Podcast now has a membership. If you would like to join and become a member of the show, it's a $2.99. And currently, right now, with that membership of $2.99, you guys will get a exclusive early access to a Saturday release. Now, as the show grows and the membership numbers grow, I'm thinking about doing a quarterly giveaway of some piece of merch, and we'll get that going. So again, if you guys have had a story or an encounter or something and you'd like to share that on the show, please email me at thecryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. thecryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. Without further ado, let's bring this fantastic guest on. Curtis, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, how you doing there, Dan?
I'm doing good. So, California.
Yep.
Yreka, California, 1983, the summer of 1983. You're 15 years old, and I had to stop you from getting too much into detail about this encounter because I started getting goosebumps. So I'm just going to give you the camera, and I'm going to let you know that you have the floor. So let's get into what you witnessed at the tender age of 15.
Yeah. So basically, like I said, I was 15 years old. And let me add, I actually have an identical twin brother, and his name's Ray, and he's a vital part of my story too because he was there. Now, Yreka was experiencing a drought at the time, so I just it was very hot, and it was like 110 degrees out, and so we had to stay inside for most of the day, for actually pretty much the whole day, because I have real light skin. So of course we just don't want to burn. So we did our activity at in the evening time, and anyway, so to back up a little bit, we just came to that town because my aunt lived there, and she lived in some apartments right next door to to an elementary school, and this is in the Yreka is actually located in the just off the bottom of the what do you call that, the national forest there, the Klamath National Forest, in the middle of the state there, and as the crow flies, if you ever of course you've heard the Gimlin tapes, the Patterson Gimlin tapes, as the crow flies, that town was only about anywhere from 60 to 80 miles away. But it's on the same mountain range. So anyway, so we came into town. We just stayed. We got dropped off there by my parents because we moved around a lot, and my dad was a cook, and so we were always moving. We moved from town to town, in Oregon and California as well, mostly California, but we did live some time in Oregon. But but we came back when I was 15. We came back into California, where I came to stay in Yreka. And like I said, my aunt stayed in this, had an apartment right next door to the school. So we were only there for a couple of weeks at the time. And then what happened is that, we were pretty shy because we're moving around. We were pretty shy anyways. But we met up with some neighborhood kids, and two of those kids were basically about the same age as me and my brother. They're actually twins also, but they were fraternal twins. They didn't look anything alike. And so anyways, and then I had my sister, and then then my sister had a boyfriend that she just kind of hooked up with when we got there. And actually, he was a couple years older than me and my brother. He was probably at least anywhere from 17 to 18 years old, and my sister was only 14. But being coming from my family, we were pretty kind of I don't really want to say too much about it, but I'm almost like trailer trash. We had a real low income family, and we had a kind of weird upbringing there. But so anyways, let's go back. Let's keep going forward there. So the two brothers came over to our place at my aunt's place there, and then my sister and her boyfriend were there in the same place where we were at. So we decided, or actually the two brothers decided they wanted to play a game of war or hide and go seek. Or they might even call it guns, but it was only a team of three. There was three of them, three on one team and three on the other. On my team, I was the captain on my team, which had my sister and her boyfriend were on my team, and then my brother had his team, which was the two other brothers and himself. Now, this was about 6:30 at night. The sun was already going down, so it might have been close to 7. And the sun was already set pretty good, so it wasn't light. There was a little bit of light in the sky, a little bit, but not enough to identify anything really, And then so anyways, my brother's team, they're the ones that were they lost the coin toss, so they had to count down from 100 so they can give my team enough time to take off and kind of hide from them, even though I think they did cheat a little bit because it wasn't because they knew exactly where we were at, which I found out later. So the way the school is positioned there, we're right next door, and there's the school is, it's like a regular, it's got a baseball field or / soccer field as well. So my brother's team was actually located at the southeast corner of the schoolyard, and my team, we made it all the way around where the baseball diamond was at the opposite corner, at the northwest corner. So we were like diagonal from each other. Even though I didn't know where my brother's team was, that's where they were. And like I said, my brother knew where we were because they didn't follow the instructions on what we were set. They kind of wanted to cheat on us, but yeah. So basically, what it comes down to is that we were my team was hiding down below down in the behind the baseball diamond, and so these Bigfoots were actually, they came from the school right there, basically right there on the side where my brother, the schoolhouse was right there, pretty close to where my brother was hiding down. They were laying on the ground, looking towards us basically. But so they seen these figures walking across in front of them. They were walking about 50 yards in front of my brother and his team. So at this time, my brother and his team they already knew exactly what they were looking at this time. They were looking at each other. They're in total shock, but I think they're too scared to make a move at this time. They didn't want to startle these figures, and I can't tell if they even we don't even know if the Bigfoot even realized they were there or not, because they didn't make any they didn't even turn their heads or anything to look at my brother's team, but they kept walking through the field, going towards the west, which is at the end of the perimeter is an 8 to 10 foot chain link fence, and it's a pretty tall fence. And which is where I was. I was over on that, like I said, I was over on that opposite corner over there on the west side. And behind me, right on that 8 foot chain link fence, was a man door, a man gate. So you can walk through. And then on the other side of that field is basically just undeveloped property or undeveloped land, and it went around. It went about an eighth of a mile, and there's a lot of rolling hills there. There were some trees, sporadically located, and then there's a lot of the tall grass. There's about 3 foot tall grass for one thing, and then there's a lot of these dirt mounds, of course, that had grass on them. Also, there's a lot of shrubbery around too. But like I said, beyond that piece of property, like I said, there's some houses in the distance. There's quite a few houses, but they're kind of like, they weren't like right next to each other. And then beyond that is where you start heading back up in the hills, right there in the mountains of the Klamath National Forest. And so we go back to where my brother was at when he seen these figures walking across the field, and they already knew what they were. They were my brother and his team already whispered to each other, and they were saying, there's going Bigfoot. That, they're looking at each other in disbelief. But they watched them walk all the way over, it was quite a few hundreds of yards or whatever it was to get to the fence. Now, one of them was definitely bigger than the other two that were there, because the two that were smaller, they looked like they could have been juveniles. That's either, at least one of them was juvenile, then one was a little bit bigger than that one from the other one. So it could have been a mother and juvenile, but we can't really tell with that one. But I know the bigger one, that was the more aggressive of the three. I wouldn't say they're aggressive, but that was the more dominant one. Was the bigger one, whether it was probably the parent or it could have been an older sibling, whatever. But it was definitely bigger than the other two. So when they got to the fence, when they finally got to the fence, well, it didn't take them very long, but they're walking about 15 feet away from each other. So when I seen them walking across, because I could see the silhouettes walking across, but of course I'm just thinking that's my brother's team. That was my brother's team. I wasn't worried about it. I wasn't scared, because at this point, as far as I was concerned, that was my brother's team. But I could see them. I could see the silhouettes walking the field, and they were probably about 100 yards away from me. So I couldn't, like I said, I could just see the light coming from the behind them. I could see the lights from the apartments, and I see some street lights shining down, and there's some lights by the school too. So all that, and then you got the stars and all that. So it was pretty bright out. So, but it wasn't where I could see the actual definition. The sky was kind of a, it wasn't pitch black. Okay, so when these figures got to the fence line, my sister's boyfriend, he wanted to start going and start blasting away. He wanted to just right away. He just wanted to go into action and try to get these guys. But I kind of stopped him. I said, no, let's just get on the other side of the fence, because looks like that's where they're headed. So we backed up to the right next to the fence. We're just getting ready to walk into the or not walk, crawl in to the other side of the fence through the man gate. Now, my brother was telling me what happened is that when they got to the fence line, the figures, the Bigfoot, okay, the bigger one, he just all he did is just take his arms and he grabbed a hold of the top of that fence, and he just yanked himself right over without putting his feet on the fence or anything. He just grabbed it and just boom, right over the other side, And I was right there, right next to the fence, and I could see them right next to the fence, but the fence didn't move. I just didn't even feel anything. All I know is that whatever he did, or he jumped over, it didn't rattle the fence at all, and that was that part. And then the other two, the two smaller ones, they decided for whatever reason to walk around. They had to walk down another, like I said, 50 yards to get around, because the fence stopped on the property line of the between school property and where the apartments property was. There's some grass and all that stuff there. There's also a little playground over there too. But so they walked around it for whatever reason. So now my sister and her boyfriend and myself, we got on the other side. And like I said, I didn't see, there was nothing for me to be startled with at this time, because as far as I was concerned, that was my brother's team. And I was waiting. I just want to just wait until we let them come to us or whatever. But we crawled down it took us a while. We crawled pretty slowly down the fence line, going towards the same area where I thought my brother's team was at. So no, we get about 50 or 60 yards down, where I knew that I didn't really want to go any further, because my brother's team would have been somewhere right around there. There's a lot of shrubbery and stuff there too in the field, so I didn't want to keep going. I just wanted to kind of sit there and relax. So we just sat next to the fence, and we just sitting there. Once we got there, we were there for a couple of minutes, and so now my sister and her boyfriend, they already showed signs that they didn't really want to play this game that much anyways. They're more into each other than anything. So, they're just giggling and laughing and stuff. So eventually, just like I said, within the 2 minutes that we were there, they decided they want to go ahead and go crawl in the grass, if you know what I mean, because they were just more interested in each other. So I just said, go ahead. I just wanted them to get away from me, because they were giving away our position, because they're being just a little bit too, a little bit noisy for my taste. So finally, they just crawled out in the grass. They said they're just going out there, and then they'd be my backup, I guess, But I already knew better. I was just gonna let them just go, and then I'll wait for the other team. And like I said, it's basically a game of war where they're going to cut now, and we didn't have no weapons or anything. It was just a matter of, okay, if we see them, I'm just going to just act like I'm shooting them, We didn't really have a plan that much. Anyway, so they crawled out in the grass, and I didn't see exactly which way they went. So here I am just, because I was still looking around for the other team. I kept just scanning around with my back against this fence, and I was looking down the field and the fence line, and I was just going back and forth. I didn't know if my brother's team would have went all the way around and try to circle around or something through the field. So I was trying to keep myself aware, so I'm just going back and forth, and I was doing it kind of slow. So now after that, like I said, when my sister and her boyfriend went in the grass, and I could still hear them giggling and laughing and stuff, and I kept trying to tell them to be quiet. I was kind of whispering it to them, just tell them to be quiet, but at the same time, they weren't listening to me. But like I said, about a minute or two later, I'm doing my scanning, and then now I see two images sitting or squatting on one of the dirt mounds, which is about 20 feet away from me. But at this point, I'm thinking that that's probably my sister and her boyfriend. They were just sitting there, or squatted, whatever they were doing. But they were just sitting there. But they were totally motionless. And like I said, and I didn't even see them even arrive. They were just, all I know is I was doing my turning, and then there they were. And then the sound of my sister and her boyfriend giggling and stuff and laughing in the grass, they were pretty close to him. I don't know how many feet they were, but they were close enough to where the sound was kind of related to me, was in sync to where the two Bigfoots were sitting there, So I'm only sitting there for about another minute or two anyways. And those two that were just sitting there, they weren't moving not one iota. They're just sitting there, just staring at me. They were staring at me, and but like I said, I wasn't even scared, but it's just that it was kind of weird. They were just, I was thinking it was because my sister and her boyfriend were just goofing around and stuff, but they weren't moving. So it didn't make sense in that aspect. But anyway, so like I said, after a minute or so, I'm still doing my scanning back and forth. So now what happened after that is I was coming around my last time I was coming around, and even when I just passed the visual point of the two that were sitting there, and I was getting ready to look back toward down the field, and then on the corner of my eye, I see a third one. But this time, I'm thinking that was the other team, because, I'm looking at the two that were there. That should have been my sister and her boyfriend. And then when I see that third one, now I'm thinking there's at least one of the people on the other team. So now I'm just thinking, okay, is the other team coming at me? But that third one that came in, that was about 30 feet away. That was about another 5 feet past the other two that were sitting there. So when it came out from the bush that was back there, that it startled me, but I wasn't scared at that time. But when it started running, it was running. I mean, it was coming super fast. It was like within 5 strides. It was from basically 30 feet away from me. It took probably 5 strides to get to where I was at. And even before I get off my feet, I was yelling. I was saying it's the other team. I was yelling, but even before I can get up, that third Bigfoot stopped like 10 feet in front of me, right down from me, because I was up on a little bit of an incline where the fence was at. So there was about another 3 foot down where he was at, but he came within 10 feet from where I was at. I just looked right straight at me. But I was already on, and then finally I was on my feet at about the same time that he stopped. And like I said, I was yelling as the other team, and then I decided, okay, I'm just gonna start blasting away. I just started going bang, 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 bang. I just started yelling that at the top of my lungs. Now, at this point, my brother was way back, back in the corner. Then they heard me yelling as loud as I could. But like I said, at this time, I was still not aware of what I was looking at, even though I knew that something was not right. I'm looking at him, and that third one that came up to me, that I could tell. I could see the hair. I'm going, okay, what's going on here? There's definitely something not right. I could see it didn't have a neck, and it was pretty wide. It was definitely 3 to 4 feet wide, and it had to be over. It was definitely over 6 feet for sure. It could have been 6'5" to 7. But it was definitely way bigger than any of us, that were there. I only weighed 135 pounds myself at the time, or 130. So when I started blasting away, like I said, that one just stopped and just looked at me. We stared at each other for like I'd say about 2 seconds. But at this time, the other two that were sitting on the mound, they stood up also, and that's when I realized it was the other team, even though I didn't realize it. I didn't really completely realize it. Because, okay, now I knew that my mind, I actually went into a shock, because my mind was saying I'm looking, or I'm not looking at a Bigfoot or anything. But my eyes are telling me they are looking at a Bigfoot. It wasn't until they turned around, when they were looking at me, and then they turned around and started leaping away from me. That's when I went to an actual kind of a shock, because now I knew that they weren't even human. Because what I was looking at, and of course, Bigfoot wasn't even on my radar, because I didn't even, at that time, I've always heard about Bigfoot, of course, but and the stories about him, but never really, I never really thought that, didn't even think either way if they're real or not. But when they started leaping away from me, I could see them leaping, pretty high out over the grass, and they weren't running like super fast away from me, because they kept looking back at me too, like as if I was, just to make sure I wasn't following them, because I could tell they weren't aggressive. It was more like they wanted to, they were curious about what I was doing, because we were just a bunch of kids. We were inside of, at an elementary school, so. I almost feel like they've already been there before, and they probably know that that's where the kids, they play in the playground and stuff. So anyways, that's basically what my take is on that part of it. But when they were, as they were running away from me, like I said, they're turning their upper torsos, and I could see them just kind of looking back, and they weren't like running super fast, because I could see them even, 100, 200 yards down. I could still see their silhouettes. And then my sister and her boyfriend, they finally got up, and they were standing. I didn't see them get up or anything, but they were standing right next to me eventually, and they could see the image of the figures running away, but they couldn't catch any definition or anything. They didn't know what they were looking at, But like I said, when they were running away from me, my automatic reflex was I called out deer. Right when they started running away from me, I just started yelling out deer. I just kept saying deer, deer, deer over and over and over, because I was in shock at this time. There's no way I couldn't just reel out and say, hey, there's other people there. They weren't people. That's for sure. So that's why my mind and my eyes were just like they were having conflict with each other. I just because I couldn't believe what I was seeing, basically. And I was in shock. I still had a little bit of wits with me at the time, and then I can hear my brother. My brother was come running, and his team were running from the other side of the field, from the other side of the fence there. And I can hear him yelling, saying something. And so I just turned around and put my hand on the fence. And at this time, they're still running. I was still confused. I didn't know what I was kind of just trying to get my wits with me about me and stuff. And then, so basically, by the time they got to the fence, my brother, within 10 feet, the only things I heard finally from him, because they were yelling as they were running anyways, but it wasn't until about 10 feet away from the fence when he yelled out, "We saw Bigfoot." And that was it. When he said those words, when he said Bigfoot, everything just went, from being, just being nice and calm and confused with a little bit, but I felt more fear at this time than I've ever felt in my whole entire life, ever. Even to this day, I've even had bear encounters that never scared me that much because at least I knew what a bear is, and like I said, I've I wouldn't say encounters. One was kind of an encounter, but the black bears here in California, are not they're not killers anyways. But anyways, when I went to a deep shock at that point. The total fear, the blood just rushed down my face, and my brother told me what happened after that because I didn't know exactly how I did it, but somehow I just took a couple things up as far as I could. I just reached as far as I could up the top of the well, at least part of the way into the chain link fence, and I was able to, and I grabbed a hold of the top of it, and same thing. I just went ahead and I threw myself over somehow, without even touching the other side of the fence. I just threw myself over, and I was young anyways. I was, like I said, 130 pounds, and I was in pretty good shape. So it wasn't like I was worried about hurting myself anyways, even though I didn't even know if I would have or not. But the last thing I can remember, the first thing I can remember after that whole incident is being in the middle of the field. I still picture myself running, and then finally I had just enough to where I could see what's going on, and I actually just fell to my knees in the middle of the field somewhere, and I had tears just running down my eyes. I was total fear. I was shaking. It felt like I was shaking so bad. It was like 30 degrees out, and it took me about 40 minutes or so, maybe 45 minutes, something like that, just for me to be able to collect my wits and to stop shaking. And my team were, or everybody was there, my brother and his team, my sister and her boyfriend. They're all just trying to calm me down too, because they weren't afraid at this time at all. I was the one that had the most close interaction with these creatures that I guess it just affected me way more than anybody else. And like I said, it took me about 40 minutes to finally. We all just decided to sit around in a circle, and I wanted, when I sat down, I wanted to be facing that 8-foot fence, because that's how scared I was. I wanted to make sure that at least, okay, we're all there. I felt safe with a group of us there anyways. I just felt more of a little comfort level there. But at the same time, I did not want to keep my eyes off that fence. In my own mind, I'm thinking, oh, they can come back, even though when you look back on it, there's no way they're coming back. But so we all sat around and we decided to talk about what happened, and that was I got my brother's story and everything, and that's where everything tied into each other. Because when he told me that he knew exactly what he was looking at, all it did is just confirm what I was looking at. Now, if he didn't see what he saw, then I wouldn't even, there's no way I would have even written a book that I did, right? And because the story would have been just been my own story, But when I got confirmation of what they saw and what they knew that what they saw, then that just confirmed with me that, otherwise who knows? I don't know how the story would have went after that. Anyways, it had been my situation, but. So we finally went inside after hours of sitting there talking. We finally got back inside to my aunt's apartment there, and she had her boyfriend there too. We decided to tell my aunt the story and her boyfriend, and of course they didn't believe any of it because they're thinking, okay, we just got there. We'd only been there for a week or two at the most when this happened. So now here we are. We show up, and we're telling my aunt about this Bigfoot being right there, basically right close to the apartment complex. And another thing is that we were pretty shy kids anyways, because we moved around so much that just making friends was already hard enough for us anyways, and so we weren't able to make friends that fast and get used to knowing people too much because we were always moving. So the idea of us even going to like go to the police department or whatever to even to make a claim was not even in my vocabulary whatsoever. We didn't want anything to do with that because we knew exactly what happened. We'd be the laughing stock of the town, you know. And I mean, of course, yeah. What are you gonna do? You're gonna tell the police that we just seen 3 Bigfoots in the playing at the playground at the school, in the school grounds, you know. So yeah, we didn't even entertain that idea at all. And neither the other brothers didn't want to do it either. I guess they were, even though they lived in the town, but they agreed they didn't want to do something like that either, because I guess they had enough sense, just like we did, that we didn't want to be like the center of attention in that aspect of it, and basically that's basically most of my story. Everything else in my book is involved with what we did prior to that engagement, and the different things we did afterwards, and that's basically it. I don't know if you have any more questions. If you have any questions for me, Daniel.
Okay, this has been like the last 2 weeks, or last week or so, that I have just had one incredible encounter after another after another. I mean, there's 6 people.
Yep.
You and your twin brother.
Yep.
The 2 neighbor boys that are twins.
Yep.
And then your sister and her boyfriend. Now, it's funny that they think that, you didn't know what was going on when they were going to go hang out in the grass. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
Listen, and like you said, poor white trash, PWT,
Exactly.
Here's the thing. I grew up like that. I grew up in trailer parks. I grew up in apartments. My parents were divorced when I was young. So, I know I can, have that sense of camaraderie with you, in a sense that I know it's like tough to make new friends. You're moving from here to there, to this, to that, so I get that. And when you meet somebody and then you share an absolutely incredible and intense encounter like this, let me ask you, do you by any chance, do you talk to those 2 or at least one of them anymore?
No, it was funny because we ended up living in that town throughout, off and on, actually, because like I said, we moved around a lot. But we when we split up that night, these brothers, we never even talked to them after that. But we did go to school with them that year.
Yeah.
My mom and dad came came back to Yreka when they didn't find any work that they wanted. They didn't find a town they wanted to live in, I guess. So they decided to come back to Yreka, and we were there for at least a good 2 months anyways. We were living with my aunt, but they finally came back. And they got jobs, or my dad, he was the only one that was working, but he's the one that got a job as a cook. And so we spent at least that year, even though we moved in different apartments and trailers and stuff. Even throughout that whole year, we moved probably 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
In the same town, but we stayed in that town for at least a year.
Yeah.
And the 2 brothers that we're talking about, we'd see them every day, but we never associated with them. We weren't enemies at all. We just never, for whatever reason, we just never talked to them, because we found some other group of a couple of guys that became good friends with me and my brother, and that's who we hung out with.
I know exactly how that is, especially growing up, moving to a new town, or moving to a new part of the town that you didn't live before, and it's like you're meeting new people. Like I lived in Aurora, Colorado, and in 1.5 school years, I went to 3 different middle schools.
Okay.
So yeah, it was hard to find friends. But yes, I do have questions. So
Yeah. Yeah.
number one, when you said that you saw silhouettes at first,
Yeah.
and later you found out your brother saw them for what they
Yeah.
were.
Exactly.
And you said they kind of shifted and then they were moving towards you.
Yeah, not really towards me. They were going right straight west towards the
Right.
fence.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was way up on the north end of that. The north. The northwest corner, and they were pretty much in the middle of the field, going right straight towards that fence.
Right. So what color were they? Did you
That
get
I
a good enough look or?
not really a super. I could definitely see the individual hairs.
Yeah.
And to me, it looked like they were definitely like it was more of a blackish color.
Right.
Even though I can't really completely just say they were black, but in my interpretation of what I seen, it looked like they were probably black, either black or brown.
Yeah, and the time what you were describing was, I would assume it was probably like twilight, so it
Yeah,
wasn't quite dark yet
yeah,
because it
yeah,
still had a little bit of light maybe come from the horizon. So
yeah.
yeah. Now did the first two notice anybody at all? Not necessarily
Yeah.
you, but or were they just going, they had a path they wanted to go and that's where they were going and they didn't really.
Yeah, the only indication that even showed me that they had any inkling that we were there in the first place is with my interaction. So they knew that I was there
Right.
already,
Yeah.
And but as far as my brother's concerned, it's they didn't make any indication as when they were walking across. They didn't make any attempt to look down at where my brother was at. And like I said, my brother was about 50 yards away from him.
Yeah.
They were completely silent for and they didn't say any. They didn't even whisper to each other until after the Bigfoots were already getting pretty close to the fence. So they started whispering after they feel like they're already far enough away to where they wouldn't draw any attention because they were whispering. They kind of like were lip syncing with each other.
Yeah.
They're going Bigfoot,
Yeah.
all three.
Now, where your sister and this dude, I mean,
Yeah, this guy.
18 and hanging out with a
Yeah.
14-year-old.
Yeah,
What is his deal?
Yeah, he was a weird guy. I liked the guy, but he was definitely a loner, and he was like an only child.
Man, I'm telling you right now, I'm older than all of. I mean, I've had plenty of stepsisters. Both my parents were married 4 times.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 half brothers, one same mom, different dad, and then another one same dad, different mom, and then I have my blood brother, same mom, same dad.
Oh yeah.
And whenever my dad would get married, for some reason, I'd have like 1 or 2 stepsisters, and I was always
Okay.
older than them, so I was really protective of them. So I remember one day at school, we were kind of hanging out on the playground at the school after school hours, whatever. And I think I was in 5th grade and she was in 4th grade, and the 6th grader came over and kind of messed with her, and I got in between them and stood up to him. Well, then we went to school and we were out on the playground again, and this time he decided he wanted to pat her on the behind,
Oh
and
man.
she came up and told me. And again, I'm in 5th grade, she's 4th grade, this 6th grader, and I saw him standing in line waiting to go into his classroom, and I just went Tasmanian devil on him. I just
I can picture that.
I handed it to him. But the reason I bring that up is with your sister and this dude.
Dude.
Where were they positioned when these were coming? Were they separated from you guys, or were they kind of like moving between you guys? Or
Yeah, that's what it looked to me like, because when that came towards me, it just went around the other 2 that were sitting there.
yeah,
So my sister and her boyfriend must have been just right off from them somewhere, from that third one that was coming towards me. So, but they were pretty close. I'm not sure exactly where they're at, but they weren't that far. I can almost guess that third one that came running at me was like a matter of just maybe a couple feet at the most from them.
and it's crazy how you described how you were feeling after everything, because you just said it came running at you.
Yeah.
And now, man, my thing is when I listen to your encounter, you did what I would have done. You know,
Yeah,
you were 15, your sister was 14. That's your little sister.
yeah,
And again, you were doing what you could to protect her in a way, because here's
mm,
this. I mean, this dude's 18. He's a clown. You could hit him with a rock and he'd go running
yeah, yeah,
away.
yeah,
But
definitely.
now you have this mammoth thing that's probably 5 times your height
Yeah.
and easily almost 10 times your weight,
Oh yeah.
you know, and here you are, a buck 30 if you got sand in your shoes,
Hmm.
and you're doing what you're doing to kind of change the course of action. So I applaud you for that,
Yeah.
man. I mean, I don't know if you're just super brave or just really dumb, but
Yeah. Well, like you said, the fear didn't even hit me until I realized
yeah,
100% of what I was looking at. You know.
yeah, you know. And then
Mhm.
so, you said that you saw the two smaller ones, and I
Mhm.
found this fascinating, that they started leaping away. So
Yeah.
are we talking, we're not running, but these guys were actually bounding. They were jumping,
Oh yeah. They're
try
like,
to,
that's the reason why I was yelling out deer, because they're leaping like as if they're leaping up over the grass, like you'd see a deer doing it, right?
yeah,
And that's why it shows you how much of a shock I was at, because of course I know they weren't deer, because they were in human form basically. They didn't have four legs. They
yeah,
were running, and when they took off, that's when they started out kind of strong leaving, because they probably startled them when I was yelling at the top of my lungs.
yeah,
And I know that you when you hear the stories about being Bigfoot being aggressive, I just feel like they know exactly where the humans where the boundaries are.
yeah,
So they're coming into our neighborhood. So of course they're probably not going to be showing any aggressiveness. They're not going to be in my own opinion, I think that they're not going to be trying to what do you call that? Bring themselves out in the open like that, as far as other humans and stuff either.
yeah.
That's
Well,
that's why you hear the stories when you go up in the mountains and stuff. They get aggressive there because you're
they're
in their house.
yeah.
They're, you know.
Well, let me ask you, so about how tall was the big one that came? And well, let
Yeah.
me ask you this. You said you were about 10 feet from this one.
Yes.
Now, when it turned and came at you, how far was it when it first turned?
Okay, so the other two that were there were about 20 feet away from me. So so basically, by the time it turned towards me, it was basically about the same distance, about 20, because it went just on the other side of the other two. So by the time it turned to head towards me, was about, I would say about 20, 22, 23 feet. They might have been just a little bit behind the other two, of course. So yeah, somewhere between 20, 22, 22 something feet, whatever it is. Let's
So
just
it
say 20
covered,
feet.
so 20 feet. So we'll say between 10 and 13 feet. How quick did it
Oh yeah, it was a
eh,
matter of just a couple of seconds.
just
I mean,
bam, it was there within you? And
yeah.
now, oh man,
Because
that's,
I had enough sense that it was the other team, right? That's what I
yeah.
figured. So I wanted to get up and start blasting away. But even before I get on my feet, that thing was already stopped. It already stopped at 10 feet from me. So I'm like looking at it, and then and in my mind I'm going, okay, there's definitely it's not right. There's no way that he could have ran that fast.
It's funny because you played a game that I played so many times as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
We would build them out of scrap wood, or we'd find a branch that kind of
Oh
looked like something. And
yeah,
here it is. You think you got the drop on your other team, your brother and these
yeah,
twins. You think you got the drop on them,
yeah,
and you jump up
yeah.
and
I'm blasting
you get ready to give them hell like Audie Murphy,
yeah,
and it's not the other team.
exactly.
Oh my gosh. So, and I thought of something when you described them as leaping, like deer.
Mhm.
Now, I'm sure you have, being a knower, you've gotten on YouTube, you've watched videos, you've seen pictures of these
Mhm.
trackways. And some of
Yeah,
these trackways are like, anywhere between 4 and like 7 feet between
yeah,
prints.
yeah,
Do you think that when people come across trackways like that that's what they're doing? Because here's the thing, I never thought about that before. Of when you see a span of 4 to 7 feet between steps, and it's in
Mhm.
a single line, you know,
Yeah.
you don't think about them leaping like you just described.
Oh
A
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
people say, "Oh, by this stride, this thing is 11 feet tall." Think
yeah.
about that though. That is
Well, yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, and it's like who knows? I mean, I don't know if they make a further leap, like I said, than what they would if they're just walking. Because I know even when they find the prints that looks like they're walking, because they can tell by the way the prints are, is the way they make the prints make their impression in the ground and stuff. So they can probably determine that it's definitely walking versus leaping, anyways.
Right.
So I don't know how big their stride is if they start running either.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely. My thing is when you see something like this, I mean, the bigger one definitely was either an older sibling or a
Yeah.
parent.
Yeah, it was definitely more domineering for sure. But I did not feel one bit that they were that I was being threatened whatsoever.
Right.
Because the way I was looking at it, the way it was coming at me, it just looked like it was almost like it was coming. It was kind of leaning down, like it wanted to say something to me.
Right.
It was weird. It was just like it kind of even tilted its head a little bit.
Now, how tall do you think that one was?
Oh, that one was it was definitely over 6 feet for sure. I was about 5'6" or so myself, so I know it was. And even when I was looking at it, it was like a 3 foot down. It was pretty much almost even to where I was when I was up on the hill.
Yeah, that thing's 6, maybe 7 feet tall. That's.
Oh yeah.
And then how big do you just a guesstimate? Because I know they were at a distance away, but how tall do you think they were?
The other two.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were definitely at least close to 6 feet, no matter what. They were definitely big. They were even bigger than me myself.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's. And you said that your brother saw one of them just reach up to that fence and just pull itself right up and over.
Yeah, that was the bigger one. That was the one that
Wow.
he knows because he knew exactly which one the bigger one was, of course. And then he's seen the other two decide just to go ahead and just walk around the fence line, and those are the two that actually ended up being way down up the fence line where I ended up meeting up with them.
Right. And so you guys were inside the school grounds.
Mm-hmm.
And the wood line and stuff was on the opposite side of the fence.
Yes.
And so, I mean, from hearing the story, what you've seen, what I can, determine, they were just cutting through the school, cutting through the field, whatever, and just easiest or the quickest way between 2 points is a straight line, and that's just what they were doing.
And like I said, I think they probably I'm almost positive they probably knew that was a place where kids hang out anyways. And I've always, after doing all my research, I know that I've seen people talk about how they like kids and they like women too. Or they, for some reason, they drift towards those two, the women and children, basically.
Yeah, that's crazy. So after this encounter, years later, Mr. Curtis Jones became a published author. And you guys, this is what his book is. Not Just Another Bigfoot Encounter. They Came Out of the Shadows by Curtis Jones. So, when did you release this book?
This just came out just in December of December 31st, basically. Just basically January 1st.
Oh,
was the first time I knew it was out. It came out, but yeah, it just came out a couple months ago.
Okay. And if anybody wanted to purchase this book, where can they purchase it from?
They can get this book at off of Amazon, and I just lowered the price because it's been out for a couple months now. So I lowered it from the $9.99 to now it's $6.99.
Okay.
And it's basically it's like it's a coffee table book is what I call it.
Okay.
It's a short story.
Okay. Cool. And who did the artwork on the cover?
Well, that was the funny thing is that's the only way I was able to even do the book in the first place. I found a place or it was on Facebook. I found this platform that uses AI technology, and I use that technology to be able to edit my wording because I'm not a great writer, so I had to use something. And that's how I did it. Now it was easy, and even going through it was called Spines. Mm-hmm. It's called Spines. It's they do the books right, and then it's a whole program where I got a caseworker that works with me, and then she submits what I'm looking for. All I had to do is write down all the different things what I wanted in the book in my book cover, right?
Right.
And it tied it exactly the way that I described it.
Yeah, that's
You know,
perfect.
the first time within 3 days.
Yeah.
They must use some kind of a computer type of animated type of a programming, because they had it done within 2 or 3 days. They submitted that
Nice.
same one.
Let me ask you, are you thinking about writing another book, maybe a fiction or something like that?
No, I'm not really. Like I said, this is my first time. I've been asked to do something, but at this time, I haven't really. I'm not really that motivated. I basically just wrote this book because of this story.
Yeah,
You know,
to
'cause
get that out of there.
yeah, it's definitely something I might look at in the future. If
Yeah.
I think of something.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Hey, Curtis, I just want to say, thank you so much because I reached out to you on a Facebook page,
Oh yeah.
and you're like, I go, hey, would you be willing? You're like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, and like I said, I've done like 2 or 3 since the last time when we first started talking. So
Yeah.
I felt more comfortable. The first time I did I did like I said on the 2nd of January is my first podcast. Was just a couple days after my book came out. So
Yeah.
this was with that Linda Eastburn.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely going to buy this book. Not
Oh
because you
yeah,
lower the price, but I mean, one, I love fascinating things like this. And I have a guy that you definitely need to go on his show.
oh yeah, I'd love to go. Yeah.
Absolutely. My buddy Josh Smith.
Okay.
He's
Okay.
the host of the Mysteries Unknown
Okay.
podcast, and I'm the co-host. We do every Thursday at 8:30 Central Standard Time. We do a live podcast on YouTube, and I'm the
Okay.
co-host on that show. So it'd be okay for me to give
Yeah.
him your information.
Yeah, definitely. You got my email address,
I
and
do.
of course whatever I have on the Facebook and all that stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
words of advice from you to anybody out there that has ever encountered something like this.
Okay. Well, my like I've done a lot of camping and stuff, and like I said, I've had encounters with bears. I've had 5 different encounters with bears. I'll say 2 of them were encounters, but the other were more of sightings. Um, and even with the Bigfoot story, I didn't even know what a class A was or a class B was until just my last podcast. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I didn't know what those are. But anyways, my advice is that you kind of treat it the same as if you're just going out in the country, anyways, or out in the woods. Like I said, keep yourself, kind of be aware of where you're at. And just treat it like as if it was a bear.
Yeah.
I don't see them. They're not. I think the bear is more dangerous than the Bigfoot myself.
Okay.
So I think you just go, keep yourself prepared, and don't panic. Don't try to run, because we don't know if these Bigfoots, if they love the chase, like a bear or whatever. If you try to run away from a cat or something, they're
Uh-huh.
gonna try to chase you down.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically my advice. Just just do the normal thing you do if you're going hiking or anything. I wouldn't necessarily think you should just have a gun or whatever.
Yeah.
But you might want to bring mace or something. I never bring mace, but I always have like a whistle or something too. I have a bear whistle that I use
Yeah.
to scare away bears, but that's about it.
What do you think these things are? There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah. I know they have a very high intelligence, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to hide out as long as they have. So I'm definitely drifting towards the human aspect of their being, even though they are kind of more of I think they're kind of like how the Indians used to live, for one thing.
Yeah.
Except the fact that they just don't look like a human in our the way we look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good assessment. So,
And I
but
also don't believe in I really don't want anything to happen as far as them being captured either.
yeah.
I definitely want to see them being treated with respect.
Yeah.
Respect them like any other creature, and they're just flesh and bone. I don't agree. I don't tie in the psychic ability stuff, or the cloaking, or even the UFO. I mean, I do believe in the UFOs, even though I've never seen something, but
Yeah.
I don't see the connection between those myself. That's my own opinion. I
Yeah.
think living human or actually just beings.
I'm with you on the same thing. I don't want to see any one of these things harmed. I really don't.
Oh yeah.
Because with my sighting, and I'll tell you about my sighting if you want to hang out in the
Oh yeah.
lobby
Yeah.
after I end it. So,
Oh, definitely.
so let me go ahead and end this now. I just want to say again, thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for your story. And allowing me to kind of be a gatekeeper to your story. I know you've been
Oh
on
yeah. Yeah.
other podcasts like this, but I just want to let you know that this is always a safe space.
Oh yeah.
If I don't know if your brother is still around.
Oh yeah. We have, my brother actually lives with me. He's actually he's actually in the other room actually. So
I wonder if there's maybe if he's willing on another time have him on to get his perspective and his point of
yeah.
view on what happened. Because I just had a guest on last night who had the exact same encounter as a
Mhm.
previous guest I had on. It was
Okay.
he had a boat and he took these 7 guys three. It took him 3 trips to get him on this little island out peninsula type thing uh, to an abandoned campground,
Mhm.
and they were getting activity going like crazy. And I heard the point of view from the guys on shore, and then just last night I heard the point of view from the person that was ferrying these guys in on his boat. Um, and his encounters and him what he was seeing was even as scary, if not more scary, than what these guys are dealing
Mhm.
with. And it got so bad that they're like, listen, you guys, we got to get off this now. Come and get us. And
Oh yeah.
he could only bring in, like, because he had a bass boat, he could only bring in like 2
Mhm.
at a time.
Oh
Well, the
yeah.
first one he piled on 3 people, and the second time he came back, the rest jumped on his boat. And he said, my boat was weighted down. He goes, there's because
Yeah.
bass boats sit really low in the
Oh
water.
yeah. Yep. I know. I worked on. I actually served. I've spent 25 years on ships and stuff, and I
Yeah.
know the boating world pretty good.
And he said that, him and the person that I interviewed prior said that if we left somebody waiting for a boat to come back,
Oh yeah.
we would have came back and there would have been nobody there.
Oh yeah.
That's how terrifying it was. So,
Yeah.
so all right, I'm going to close this show out, hang
Yep.
out in the lobby, and I'll be right back to you.
Definitely. Yep.
All right, stand by. So everybody, that's our show for tonight. I'm telling you, that was a great encounter. That's not one that I've really heard before. And again, it's the first time I ever heard on how a movement away from certain areas is. I mean, he said they were leaping towards this 8-foot tall fence. You guys, it kind of gives you food for thought to think, when you see these trackways that have these long strides, are these creatures running? Are they truly 11 feet tall? Or are they leaping? Maybe the snow's too deep or whatnot. So again, that's just a way to look at things. Um, Thank you so much for joining us tonight, you guys. Again, if you've had an encounter like to come on the show, please email me at the Cryptid Podcast 72 at gmail.com. As my buddy Josh always likes to say, he likes to say, stay prayed up. And what I like to say, guys, is remember a legend always begins with a sighting. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night, and I'll see you soon.
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?